Everyone, welcome to this edition of Training Camp Live, brought to you by the incredible people at Community America. You know, Andy Reid has transformed the Chiefs Kingdom, and Lisa Ginner and her people at Community America have done the same thing in many ways. Okay, I'm not joking, Matt. The Chiefs are serious about health and safety protocol. We went over that on our last Training Camp Live. Here we are, 6.5 feet, just so you know, and I'm not joking about it. I'm serious about it. This team is trying to be a leader in the National Football League in handling the health and safety protocols. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, along with Matt McMullen. And it is awesome to be out here. We had a chance to watch practice, and this feels, Matt, like a pivot kind of day because it feels a little more like St. Joe and a little less of the truncated off-season program that Andy Reid has put into place.
Well, when I first saw you this morning, I said it feels like a St. Joe morning, right? We come out here and watch practice. I mean, yeah, this is what we love to do. This is perfect. And you were right. I mean, the past 2 weeks, the guys have been here working, but it's been very much a strength and conditioning kind of thing, walkthroughs. Today, we finally saw a little bit of football. And we've been waiting for that, months for that. And you're going to say here in a minute, on Friday, we'll bring it to you guys. We'll see some football behind us.
Yeah, that'll be great. We're now zeroing in on the first day in pads out here, and we'll bring that to you live. That'll be Friday morning. We'll be back on Saturday morning, and the pads will be on in earnest. We do need to mention today that Tyreek Hill put on a show. It was Tyreek Hill doing what Tyreek Hill does and not just being a speed guy, a guy that can catch everything.
I feel like I hammer this point home every single time we talk about Tyreek, but people around the NFL, for some reason, think he's just a straight-line speed guy. He made some crazy catches today. The guy's a vacuum. Just has me more excited for the season here coming up.
Everybody knows the Wasp, but if you look at his, just every year he gets better at route running, and now you're adding 4.3 speed to that and strength, and he tracks the football like a hunting guide. He was great here today. We want to give you, though, our 5 observations now, brought to you by Community America. And we're going to just get these quickly, and then we're going to dive back into them, each one by one, a little more in detail. And the first one that we want to mention is Andy Reid's imagination. To me, he's the most imaginative coach in the National Football League. Matt, you can prepare for him, but it doesn't help. He's going to come up with 1,000 new things.
We'll dive into this a bit later with some examples, but you're right. What Andy Reid is so great at is he doesn't just have a system that he's used over the years and plugs guys into it and has success. He's a guy that adapts to his players and the times that he's in. So you think about the offense he ran 20 years ago, it's totally different than what he's doing here today because he's always constantly adapting to what the defenses are showing him. So you wonder, how is he going to take advantage of the current situation, have some of his players in a position we would have never expected coming into the season? We were joking around, Tyreek Hill in the backfield, who knows?
Who knows? He'll have a who knows back there. He'll have Kelsey back there. He's done that. A direct snap to Kelsey, right? The second thing is, and we've noticed this today again, but we have also seen it the last couple of years in particular, and that is sign up for the tutoring. You know, there's a lot of teachers right now that are getting ready to have both live school and virtual school, and this coaching staff has done that from the very beginning because they're not afraid to tutor these players one-on-one.
Coach Reid has always described himself as a teacher. And you think about guys like Steve Spagnuolo as well. They're not just coaching, it's teaching. It's teaching guys one-on-one how to do something. It's not just barking at them. And you think about the two different kinds of teaching that are needed here. You have the virtual teaching, which was the entire offseason, making sure guys, many of which they've never met before, are understanding the playbook and what's expected of them. But then now they finally have them in here in the facility. You can work with them one-on-one and really teach them Chiefs football. So that teaching is pivotal. I think a lot of teams will benefit more this season. We'll see who the better teachers are than necessarily the coaches this year.
And one that you had, there's only 80 on the roster now instead of 90. And so is it a roster bubble bummer, or is this an opportunity?
Well, you think about seizing a different kind of opportunity for these guys. So you have like UDFAs, guys in that roster bubble. It can be frustrating when you don't have a lot of opportunities to show what you can do on the football field with OTAs and minicamp and things like that. But because of the expanded practice squad this season, which we'll get into a bit later, and the rules governing that, you could maybe not make the roster week 1, but you could make that practice squad and then be called upon in week 12 for all we know. So the fact that you can take advantage of the opportunities that you have out here, impress the coaching staff, you might not make the roster week 1, but you can make it later on. So seizing that opportunity, and whoever does that out here, is very important for this camp.
I think it could be an advantage for the Chiefs. We'll get into that a little bit more. But you also mentioned that the secondary is primary here.
Can the secondary earn some respect, Mitch? You think about the secondary from week 11 to the end of last season. It was the best secondary in the NFL. But yet nationally, people don't want to give it the respect it deserves. This isn't a weakness. This is a strength of this team, in my opinion. And now coming into this camp and now this season, they can back up what they did last year and then and show that they deserve to be one of the best secondaries in the NFL this year.
Yeah, we'll dive into that more and why the Chiefs are unique, maybe more than any other team in the National Football League in this category. And then lastly, here comes the overload. Andy Reid's alluded to it. We've seen him, same thing happened to Mahomes. Let's see, last year, McCole Hardman. But here it comes, Clyde. He just keeps, you think you got algebra figured out, and now you got to take calculus tonight.
Well, it's go time, right? I mean, for a lot of these guys, a lot of these rookies like Clyde that you're talking about, they might be asked to have big roles early on in their careers here with the Chiefs. And you know what they can do on tape. You've seen them on the field in terms of what they did in college, but now you're with them in person. It's go time. You got to figure out the playbook. You got to figure out what you can do in this offense when you have other Chiefs players around you. So I'm excited to see how those guys progress here. You know, things look good today so far. Moving forward, I'm excited for those guys.
Once again, we had a chance to watch practice today, properly distanced, and then Friday the team will be in pads, we'll be live, and you'll be able to be right with us on the practice field on the Chiefs Facebook and YouTube pages. All right, let's go back to our 5 observations and dive into them a little bit further in Andy's imagination. This is a coach who ran a 1948 Rose Bowl play in the biggest game of his life. And yet, to me, Matt, one of the geniuses of Andy Reid is he's taking the RPO game that you see every night in high school football or college football and somehow integrated that into the NFL game. You can't just run it like you run it in high school. But he has the ability to, he's new school, he's old school, but he's always thinking of new things. To me, he's impossible to prepare for, or I dare you to find a tendency in his game.
I think really he's a student of the game at its simplest level, where he has that knowledge of the history of the game, like the Rose Bowl play you're talking about, but also things like the college game. And he looks at those things, and he doesn't just blow them off and say that, you know, that's not pro football anymore. He says, how can I take these elements and then add them to my offense that cater to my players? You think about bringing Patrick Mahomes in, a guy that played in a spread offense at Texas Tech. Some people said, oh, that won't work. Well, it's working pretty well. And you think about a big 10,000-foot example of how Andy Reid's changed over the years. Back in 2002, he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 passing plays out of the shotgun in 2002 for Andy Reid. Think about that. I mean, that's unbelievable. Last season, over 500 passing plays out of the shotgun, and the Chiefs had the most passing yards out of the shotgun in the NFL. So it just goes to show that Andy Reid is a great coach, and not just because of a great system that he's running or plugging guys into. It's because he's constantly adapting to the times and the players that he has.
That's why you are the Matt Stat man. We love it. Sign up for the tutoring. This is the analogy here is there's the band director that can give you the sheet music and teach you how to play the whole song. But then there's the band director that will go to the single saxophonist and go, all right, let me help you here. This is what the Chiefs have, and that's not necessarily always the case with coaching staffs at any level. This is a coaching staff that is willing to teach, even at a one-on-one level, and I think we've seen the dividends of that. Particularly, we mentioned guys like on the defensive line. Defensive end, Tano Passanio's great improvement. And with the guys going from year 1 to year 2, these guys are not afraid to teach at the single individual level.
Totally agree. And we talked about Steve Spagnuolo earlier. He's one of my favorite examples of this because I remember when we first got to know Spags last year, he would talk about how he loved working one-on-one with guys. And you think about a defensive coordinator, that's a high position. Like, you know, you're not expected to go out there and work individually with players all the time, but that's what he loves to do, and that's teaching right there. That's what it is. So now with last season, with the defense being as good as it was, how does he take that blueprint and then make this group even better this year now that he finally has a chance to work with these guys? I think about Eric Bieniemy, too, as offensive coordinator, and even when he was running backs coach, just a remarkable teacher. You can tell the guys are endeared to him despite his fiery nature. They love the guy because he's teaching them how to be better. Things like finishing. Whenever they run, if they're way down here finishing a running play, they run 75 yards to make sure they finish the touchdown. Things like that. That's the difference between good and great, in my opinion.
New rules this year. Only 80 guys were out here today, and some of those were injured guys, so a little less than 80. But you're thinking, if I'm trying to make a team or get on tape, I have no preseason games. How am I going to do this? But is this an opportunity for some folks?
I think it is. And you think about with a team that has a lot of depth like the Chiefs, if you're a UDFA or if you're a guy in that roster bubble, it can be kind of disheartening because you want to really make an impression back in May. And you just haven't had that opportunity to do that on the field. But now you can be attacking this camp saying, okay, I might not make the roster week 1. This is a really good team. I understand that. But if I can make this 16-man practice squad, I have an opportunity maybe later on in the season, when injuries or whatever happen, where I can be called upon in week 12 or week 13. And, one example, even though last year the practice squad rules were different, one example is Alex Brown, the cornerback.
Yep.
You look at him, he was a guy that no one really knew who he was except for this front office. He grinded on the practice squad, and then he was active for the Super Bowl. So if you can just pay your dues, if you can make sure that you're busting it out here every day, even if you're concerned about not having enough reps or enough opportunity yet, you might have that opportunity later here on.
And just to review, and this is why I think this new rule is an advantage for the Chiefs, Matt. You have 80 on the roster, but 16 on the practice squad, and 6 of those 16 can be veterans. 4 you can protect on a Tuesday of game week.
Huge.
So you can't, usually the old rules were if you're on practice squad, I claim you, I have to put you on my active roster, but we lose you, right? Now all of a sudden I can protect 4 every week. But think about a guy like Taco Charlton, who is, the Chiefs are loaded at defensive end, a lot of depth there, but Taco's new to the system. And if he's, catching on, you ease him in, you can put him on your practice squad and protect him even though he's a veteran, and you don't risk losing him. But a team that has a lot of talent like the Chiefs, you're not cutting guys necessarily that you would have to because of the rules.
And this is where I'm so excited for the Chiefs is because Brett Veach is the best at this. Brett Veach has figured out how to make the rules work to the Chiefs' favor, and I have full confidence they'll attack this practice squad the way that it's set up in the best interest of the team.
Okay, next. You said secondary's primary.
It is. Mitch, again, can the secondary get some respect? You think about this group. They were, from week 11 to the end of the regular season, I'll give you some stats here. The lowest passer rating against in the NFL. The fewest passing touchdowns allowed, the 5th lowest passing first downs allowed, the 3rd lowest completion percentage, and the most interceptions in the NFL. What else do you need? This group was unbelievable last season, and yet they do not get the respect they deserve.
Here's where the Chiefs are unique, too, in that regard. The fact that we like to pigeonhole guys. This guy's a corner, this guy's a safety. What Spag showed last year, it'll be interesting to see how he tweaks it this year, but a nickel package normally in the NFL would be 3 corners and 2 safeties. Because of the talent of the safeties on this team, he can play a nickel package with 3 safeties and 2 corners, or a dime package with 3 safeties and 3 corners, or the normal 4 corners, 2 safeties. Follow me here on the math. But the point here is you can't pigeonhole these guys. You can't sit there and look. Tyrann Mathieu can play different positions. If you look at some of the Tyrann Mathieu last year had 388 snaps in the box. He had 561 in the slot, like a slot corner, and an 82% grade in coverage. Sorensen, 383 snaps in the box and 147 as a slot corner. And Thornhill, Armani Watts fits this. So the Chiefs have a unique group where they can blend this corner and safety stuff that makes it hard on an opponent.
And we look at them like just as defensive backs, right? They're not necessarily you're a safety, you're a corner. They're defensive backs. And one guy that kind of fits into that as well is L'Jarius Sneed. He's a rookie, 4th-round pick. We haven't talked much about him yet. He's a guy that played safety last year, but he was a corner primarily through his career at Louisiana Tech. Blazing speed, 4.3740. It was the 4th fastest time at the Combine. And also ball skills. 8 interceptions during his career and 3 pick sixes. No player in the FBS had more pick sixes than L'Jarius Sneed. But in that versatility in the end is what makes him so valuable. He can do all those things. He's fast. He has ball skills. But he can play safety. He can play corner. He can be a back for this team. And that fits this mold perfectly.
And finally, here comes the overload. If you're Clyde Edwards-Helaire thinking, man, I got this down, here comes 50 more volumes and 5 more sticks of memory of get on this and plug it in and learn it. Because this is where Andy Reid, this time of year, likes to push those guys. He did it with Mahomes. He did it last year with McCole Hardman. And here it comes with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's go time. These guys, a lot of them, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe Willie Gay for all we know, and L'Jarius Sneed, 3 to name. Those are guys that right now it's like you have an opportunity here where you can play some significant snaps early on. So what can you do here in this training camp to prove that you can handle all of this? We know what they can do in college. We know why they were drafted high. So what can you do now on the field to impress and show that you can handle all this information? Andy Reid's playbook and Steve Spagnuolo, it's not an easy task, but what can you do out here over these next several weeks to prove that you've learned everything virtually, now you can apply it to the field?
One of the things we do in our Training Camp Live segments is to give you a position group. We want to do that again today. And again, a reminder, we'll be live with practice on Friday. That's the first day in pads. We'll do the same thing on Saturday. So you can join us right here. And as the team will be on pads and you'll see things live. We're going to look at the quarterbacks, and it's brought to you by DirecTV. We thank you, or thank them for bringing our position group breakdown. Quarterback. Okay, you have the best quarterback on the planet who was just on the field today. We just watched him. And the question was from 18 to 19, 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. He got to the AFC Championship game, was the MVP. Now what? I was super proud of him last year, Matt. I thought he took the next step forward as a National Football League quarterback because he had to gut through the years. Stats weren't as good, but 26 TDs over 5 picks is really good. Yeah. And when you look at what he did from a toughness standpoint. So I'll give you the million-dollar question of the show, what we get asked every day, 19 to 20. Now what for Patrick Mahomes?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, and it was therapeutic watching him out here today, wasn't it? Seeing Patrick Mahomes sling the football around. And you're right. I mean, we could talk for 2 hours about just Patrick Mahomes' numbers and stats and how great he is. But what does he do next? That's the question. And my thought is you see a player that, like you said, his stats necessarily weren't astronomical like they were in his first year, but little things were better. You think about leading a team to 3 straight double-digit comebacks in the postseason. I mean, you can't teach a guy that kind of skill. So his ability to be more confident in his own ability out on the field, and also his comfort level with Andy Reid's offense and his ability to read defenses. If you think about his age, he's really not even in his prime, which is mind-boggling to think about. But how does he approach now this third season as a starter in the NFL and know a little bit more about how defenses are trying to attack him? Because defenses are eyeing in on him as the reigning Super Bowl MVP and MVP before that. Guys are trying to stop him. They want to make their career out of stopping Patrick Mahomes somehow. And I don't think they can do it. And it's his job to figure out, how can I be one step ahead of those guys? And I think that's kind of the next progression for him. And I have full confidence in his ability to do that.
And keeping him healthy. You don't want to take away his ability. I mentioned the RPO game. The Chiefs are doing it better right now than anybody in the NFL. Show me somebody better. To continue to attack downfield in that. But 3 rushing touchdowns in the postseason. His incredible run against Tennessee in the AFC Championship game. And yet you want to keep him healthy, reduce the hits on Mahomes.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this later on in your podcast. That's our plan. But, yeah, and he's gotten significantly better at that over the last 2 years. His first year, just because he's kind of learning things a little bit, being hit more when he throws and taking more sacks. This past year he was better at that. And I have confidence in the Chiefs' offensive line, particularly that interior where there's a lot of depth there with some new guys, that they can protect him, and also his ability to get the ball out quicker, his ability to understand what defenses are trying to do, and just his comfort level with his receivers and his offense. I think those numbers will keep trending in the right direction.
Yeah, go back to the tutoring. He's willing to learn. They're willing to tutor him, and just his acumen and his guts. He showed that last year. But there's 3 other quarterbacks on this roster. And so let's go through it on our DirecTV position breakdown. And let's go next to Chad Henne. Interesting guy. He's been around the league since 2008, but his last start and win was 2014. Actually, his last start and win was 2013 on December the 5th. The last time he really played was September 14th, 2014, and yet he brings a lot to this team. What about Chad Henne?
Well, and you're right. And the last time we've even seen him on the field in an exhibition game was last preseason. He goes 9 of 18 for 122 yards and a touchdown. Some nice deep throws. He looked pretty good. But really what he is he is a veteran that's been around this league a long time, started a lot of football games, and more importantly, he knows Andy Reid's system. He's been here for several years now. He knows what's expected of him. He knows what Andy Reid is thinking. And that's really the most important thing when you're looking for a backup. He hasn't won a game in a long time. But if Chad Henne had to go in there in a game, I am very confident he could execute what Andy Reid wanted him to do.
Absolutely. We're really talking about another analogy here is the civics lesson of if the president's not there, then the vice president has to go, then the secretary of state, and then what? The president pro tem of the Senate, the speaker of the House. Now we're talking about the other guys, and it's perfect segue into Matt Moore. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Matt Moore last year. Mahomes goes down in that pile of bodies in Denver, and the whole Chiefs kingdom didn't breathe for days. And yet Matt Moore comes in, hits Tyreek Hill in that game for a 57-yard touchdown as if he had repped with Tyreek Hill ever since his high school days. And then he beats the Minnesota Vikings. And the Chiefs wouldn't have had a bye without that.
No. I mean, what can you say about Matt Moore? You're right. The season was kind of in the balance at that point. I mean, it's a tricky situation where you lose your MVP quarterback. He's your leader. He's your guy. And what can you expect from Matt Moore there early in the season to try to keep the season afloat? And all he does is go beat the Broncos, who are trying to turn their season around, beats them, should have beaten the Packers if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers slinging some crazy passes. And then, of course, beats the Minnesota Vikings. He had a 102 passer rating in that time. I mean, frankly, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL in that span. And my favorite stat, 139 passer rating under pressure. And you're right, just chuck it up to Tyreek Hill if you're under pressure there. But really, when you're thinking about attacking a backup quarterback, just blitz him, get guys in his face. And he made teams pay repeatedly.
Yeah, 4 touchdowns, no picks in that 2 3/4 games that he played. The other thing is to break down the way he won the Minnesota game. 1:47 to go, the game is tied. And people forget he faced 2nd and 21 on that drive, and Matt Moore was able to hit Kelsey for 17, Tyreek Hill with a gutsy 13-yard catch, Harrison Butker gets the game-winning field goal. But there is the role of the then vice president stepping into the chair and going, we got to keep the country rolling. And without that victory, who knows how the season could have gone?
Who knows? I mean, if you take out the postseason, I think that Vikings game is my favorite game of the season last year. To see the guts of this team and the guts of Matt Moore. Yeah, it's a bummer. You don't have Patrick Mahomes out there, but this team was still rallying around him, and he felt that, and all he did was go out there and play the game of his life against a really good football team in the Vikings. Again, one of my favorite games of the season last year, and it makes you feel good about a guy like Matt Moore that he can come in there and he can win you a game if he needs to.
There is a 4th quarterback on this roster. In many ways, the most, not the most intriguing. We have the NFL MVP and Super Bowl MVP and all kinds of MVPs. But to me, Jordan Ta'amu, I was interested in the XFL, and I became kind of a fan of the St. Louis Battlehawks, and then it's gone. But Jordan Ta'amu, when you study him, when the Chiefs were able to sign him after the XFL went down, there's something here with him that is worth a closer look. This kid is an athlete.
He's a fun player. He's a dynamic, fun player. Like you said, XFL didn't have that many games and that many teams, but just in there, he led the XFL in completion percentage, 2nd in yards per attempt, 3rd in QB rating, and he can run too. We saw it a lot of times, his wheels. Yeah. He's just an athletic player that has a lot of tools. That when you're a guy like Andy Reid, you look at that kind of guy and you're like, I want to mold him. I want to create a new player out of him. The Chiefs are deep at quarterback. I'm not sure what the plan is with Jordan Ta'amu, but to have a guy like that in training camp, he's the perfect kind of training camp quarterback where it's like, what do we have in this guy? What can he add to this offense? How can we refine his skills from the XFL that we saw that were obvious to maybe more of an NFL level? I'm really excited to see what they can do with him.
But let's jump ahead here a little bit. First of all, he did throw the ability to throw the deep ball at Ole Miss. Go watch the plays, particularly with DK Metcalf, right, who's a nice guy to throw to, but he was accurate. And numbers to boundary, which are throws a lot of quarterbacks can't make at the 3rd level. Tom, who can make it. But let's get into some interesting thought. The expanded practice squad helps Jordan Ta'amu here. You have 16 on the practice squad. Instead of cutting a guy loose, keeping 3 quarterbacks, who knows what's going to happen here. That's one thing to look at. The other is the propensity of the NFL to look at the Saints. They have a veteran quarterback in Drew Brees, but then there's Taysom Hill. And now all of a sudden the Saints and Sean Payton throw a bunch of stuff at you because of that whole element. Jordan Ta'amu, to me, is enough of an athlete where if he runs out on the field the same time as Patrick Mahomes, there again is Andy Reid's potential imagination.
Definitely. And you figure those things out here in camp. I mean, I agree with you. When I was watching Ta'amu's highlights and the Chiefs first signed him, I was thinking Taysom Hill. This guy can do a lot of different things, and he can be a weapon for you on offense outside of just being a quarterback. So I think we figure out here over the next several weeks, can he be that kind of player for you? Do you have room for that kind of player? And, yeah, the practice squad. Is he a guy that maybe fits on that practice squad where you can protect him and keep him there for a little while as you continue to develop him? The guy has a lot of good, exciting tools, and I'm really curious to see how the Chiefs can take advantage of those and refine those.
And finally, we need to mention Mike Kafka here, who's an outstanding assistant who has worked with Patrick Mahomes ever since Patrick walked on this complex. I mean, he's been Mahomes' caddy for the most part. But Kafka, his ability to teach and absorb, and Andy Reid to trust him to be a guy that works with these guys, to me, Kafka is a big asset to this coaching staff.
One thing I love about Andy Reid is how he always promotes guys from within. And a lot of his former players, he gives them opportunities, and then they rise in the ranks when they really impress. Mike Kafka is a great example of that. And you're totally right. He was Patrick Mahomes' personal guy when Mahomes first came in the league, and you see him kind of rising through the ranks now. Obviously the coaching staff, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, everyone gets a lot of credit for the offense, but Mike Kafka cannot be discounted. That guy is a huge part of this team's success.
And the way that this offense works together, get Eric Bieniemy and all these guys in the input. I said it's like NASA scientists that are inputting into this offensive program. But this quarterback group is very interesting. They do a lot of things. All of them are smart. And you have to be in an Andy Reid offense. There's so much to try to absorb, and that's what makes Patrick Mahomes even better than a guy that can sling the ball 70 yards.
Have to be more than an athlete, right? You can't just be a great player physically. You have to have it all up here. And Patrick Mahomes and really the rest of the backups on this roster, they have that. It's obvious. I mean, their acumen for understanding how defenses are trying to attack them situationally, what plays they should be trying to go for. That is clear every day from Patrick Mahomes, and it's only gotten better over the course of his career.
All right, here we go. Reminder, pads on Friday, and we will be live here Friday and Saturday. So join us in both of those morning practices. Matt, awesome job. Matt McMullen, great follow, by the way. And, of course, he's the home of the Matt stat. The guy's grinding, never sleeps. Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. Thanks to the folks at Community America for making this possible. And camp is on. Here comes the season.